All right, guys, I have Adam, one of our lube techs here at the dealership. We're going to go through this body style Fusion, and I'm going to show you, coming from a master here, on exactly how I would inspect this vehicle as a shakedown and the quick lube. Share this with your lube techs, your semi-skilled techs, senior techs. Maybe they might learn something from me. I don't know. But we're going to shake this car down. It's for a subscriber here on the channel that dropped it off. It's got a couple recalls to do, but we're going to go through the inspection portion on how I do it, particularly for these cars, because I do specialize in Ford product. So let's move through here and let's get an idea on what's going on with this vehicle, if anything at all. It looks very clean. All right, so one of the first things I do when I walk up to the vehicle is I don't shake anything down first. We're going to switch from Adam to Alex. Alex is over here. He's one of our semi-skilled techs here. And we're going to go through this together. One of the first things I do is I walk up and I get an idea on what's going on with these lug nuts. If you know Ford swollen lug nuts, they are a complete freaking nightmare. And these don't look too bad. So
you got it up, Joe?
Then I'll look at the tire tread depth. Look like 8s. These are 8s. Now let's switch over to I'm noticing no trim, no bezels or anything coming loose here. All the plastic and stuff looks pretty good intact. So I just completely go around and do this check first on every one of my vehicles before I go any further. And then I'll look in, I'll get an idea of the condition of the rotors. These look really clean. You can actually see the gap between the pad and the rotor front and back. So these pads are, they're very revealing. So you can actually see what the pad depth is, and they're like newer. They're like 8 to 10. And then bottom lug nuts look good. They're not swollen. And I come down the side of the vehicle and get an idea, is there any damage to the vehicle? I kind of look around outside, but it's snowing outside. It just started our first winter storm per se. Mirror and everything looks intact. Trim looks intact. Everything looks good there. Kind of come around, get a feel for, look at the handles and stuff like that. Does it look like these are busted off? These often come off, and sometimes customers will actually, they're confused because they don't know if you did it or they did it. I always check these before I'm getting out, because these will come loose and then they'll blame you on the back portion of those handles. Continue walking around. Everything looks good. I don't see no serious damage. Wheel weights here, stickies are on. Rotors look newer in the rear. Pads are like new. Tires are really deep and look brand new. I get an idea what's going on inside here. Is everything intact? Everything's good. Continue around the back. Don't see nothing out of place, nothing popped out. Come on. Typically I'll come in here and I'll pull on the exhaust to make sure it feels like it's got a nice fit to it. Look at the gapping of the trunk, just to get a quick visual. Does everything look symmetrical? Has it been in an accident? You may end up getting blamed for something down the road. Trust me, all these things that I'm telling you right now are very important, because I've had it happen and I'm like, nope. That vehicle was documented. It came in that way. It looked like the trunk was shifted. I did notice there were some blemishes and extra orange peel in this corner. So that was not my fault. That was already there when it came in. And then we go back, look at the cameras, and sure enough, see, these are marked. It says 622, so these have been changed at some point. Tires are real good. No dry rot going on here. You can peep the date code if you want, but these look brand new. 235 50 17s. 700 traction, so this is going to be a harder tire. Anytime you start seeing something over 500, you can expect it to be a high. It's going to take a long time to wear. The temperature and the traction rating is going to be low, though. It's not going to be a AA or something like that. It's going to be a single digit typically, which this is. Traction 700, that means this tire is going to last a long time, but it's also going to ride just a little rough. You get into the Pirellis and stuff that say upwards of 800, they ride real rough. You're going to feel everything on the road. I typically try to find a tire right around 500 wear rating, and I'm satisfied with that. Got enough warranty and extension, enough comfort, instead of a harder tire like something that's rated at 700. Everything's good here. I don't see anything out of place inside here. Trim level's good. Same thing, look at the doors, look at the handles. Make sure you document any visors or whatever that's not there, so you don't get blamed for knocking a visor off Something to that extent. So we went around the vehicle. We've checked. The only thing I've seen was just a little scrape right here underneath. So everything looks pretty good overall. Raise the vehicle up in the air. I take that back. I need the vehicle at chest height so I can shake down the suspension. All right, so we're going to check the tie rod assembly. Alex is going to walk up here and shake the wheel down. So sometimes you'll apply more tie rod first, not a ball joint. So sometimes you'll push more on one side or more on the other side. It'll give you a different indication of what's going on. So Alex, go ahead. See how he's kind of pulling and shifting the tire back and forth. It doesn't look like he's being aggressive, but he's a pretty strong dude, so he's actually being very aggressive with it in a more simplistic kind of way. It's more along the lines of making the movement where it's that first push that's going to give you that click, and then the pull back, and then the push, and then the pull back. You're not shaking it like a clown over here trying to make the vehicle rock off the rack. You're looking for something very specific. It's a jounce, pull, jounce, pull. That's how this is done. So he'll check front and back, fingers there, kind of shake the tire a little bit. Doesn't feel anything wrong there. Then he'll move to his ball joint, maybe some control arm play, kind of look for some of that here. Push it on the top, pulling on the bottom in those directions. What that does is it checks your ball joint, and it actually will, sometimes you'll get a feel for whether or not that top strut mounts a little loose as well, because you'll feel that pop every once in a while. So then we'll go around the vehicle and we'll do that on all 4 wheels. So let's do that real quick. We're not going to show you the entire process, but now let's do the rest of the wheels. The other 3 wheels checked out. So now there's one other process that you can do if you feel froggy enough. You can grab a pry bar, and you can do this a couple different ways. You can try to find a spot underneath the vehicle. If you don't have a lot of room and you got to grab a rotor a little bit, as long as you're not actually out onto the paint and you're more on the ridge line inside, you're okay. You don't need to be He-Man. You can push a little. Don't feel any play there when I'm pushing. And I can go the other way, put this actually in the back side. You know what? I can do it on the ground as well. Let's go this way here. I can pull from the top just a hair. In here, I'm not gouging into the paint. You can put a rag around it if you want to, but I'm just lightly pushing. I'm not doing anything to hurt the paint. That's good there. Made no nicks or anything in the rim. It's enough to actually kind of feel what's going on. If you need to put more pressure in, then wrap a rag around it before you put it in there. Go ahead and lower it to the ground. Just barely off the ground. This is a way you can kind of check strut mounts, you can check ball joint, you can kind of get an idea. Even with wheel bearings, it might show this functional test is a little bit more aggressive doing it this way, but this actually does work for many different things. Go ahead, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Right there. About five inches off the ground or so. I'll take the pry bar, I'll stick it underneath about 7-8 inches, and I'll use the floor as leverage. Pull up. Got nothing. So, in this situation like this, pretty good to go. Now, another functional test that you can do if you're hearing popping or binding going on is, Adam, go ahead and get in the vehicle. Turn the key on. Make the steering wheel free to move back and forth. You can do this loaded. You can do this loaded and unloaded. So vehicle's off the ground right now. Stop. If you're hearing this, when you go to turn the wheel, you'll hear bung, 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 bung. It's kind of like a little bit of spring sound to it. That's typically your strut mount up here. And how you can verify that is you come over here. You actually grab the spring and hold it. Be careful. Turn the wheel. No popping. Go the other way. No popping. You can't feel any banging, pinging, or nothing going on. All right. Straighten it out. Straighten it out. All right. We're going to lower it to the ground. Put the weight on it. Now with the weight on it, do the same thing again. Just being careful. Go ahead. Go back the other way. No popping, no nothing going on, no looseness. Straighten the wheels back out. Stop right there. Now just shimmy the wheel back and forth, kind of quick. Yeah, just like that. All right, so now I got him shimmying the wheel back and forth. Watch his hands. See how he's kind of moving back and forth, back and forth? Now I put my hand on the tire and I'm feeling for a loose tie rod end that I may not have felt in the air. Now the weight's on it. I go to the other side, do the same thing. Good, no popping, no nothing. Be a little bit more aggressive with it. Maybe it's something not showing right away. A little bit more aggressive. Feels good, it's tight, all right. Shut the vehicle off. So while I got him in there, I'm gonna go through and check all the lights real quick. Right turn, left turn. Check the mirrors too if you got a light in the mirror. Customers wanna know about that stuff also. That's working, that's working. Hit your brights, brights working. Fog lights, that's working. Fog light, that's working. Let's go ahead and go to your back. Check your right turn. That's working. Left turn. Brakes. All right. Reverse. That's working. High mount's working up top. Third eye brake light. We're good. Everything's working. All right, shut the vehicle off. Get out of the vehicle. One last check before we go in the air. We're actually going to verify fluid level. Before we even go anywhere, we want to see if this oil is low before it even came in. All right, we're looking at fluid level. It is a little above the full mark. I got a little ahead of myself there. There are some basic checks that we should have checked while we were in there as well that I forgot. Go ahead and start the vehicle. Honk the horn. Windshield wipers. Make sure they're leaving no streaks. That's a pretty clean sweep right there. Those wipers are probably more fresh and newer. Another way for you to check these wipers that you may not know of, don't select them anymore, is you can actually grab the corner of it right here and do like a tear test. See if it will tear very easy, and it won't. It's very elastic. It's fighting me. Well, it did tear a little bit right there. That well, that's a decent indication that these probably need to be replaced then. Everything else was good, but that tear test failed. So at this point, I'm going to recommend wiper blades. Make sure gas door opens. It opens. Pop the trunk. Make sure the trunk pops. Opens up all the way nice and easy. Good, closes nice and easy. Go around to each one of the doors. Driver door. Keypad lights up. Key off. Step out of the vehicle. Got key with you? Grab key. Sorry. Now the key's out. Make sure the lock buttons work. The keypad works. Unlock it. Do it again. Unlock it. All right, we're functioning. We're good. Now we can get the vehicle up in there and finish our checks underneath. Wait a second. Wait a second. Battery check. Do a quick battery test. $590. Look right here, you see 590 cold cranking amps. That's how you test it. You input 590 in there, 590, and then it shows you what your readout is. And then when you're done, you give the printout to the customer, staple it to the RO. Good battery, recharge, tested at 441 cranking amps. So the vehicle has been sitting for about 3 days untouched in the parking lot, so I'm sure the battery's fine. But we run the vehicle and then test it again. So take this receipt off here and put it with your RO so you can turn it in so the customer knows you did your job. Now we can go up in the air. Another thing you can do while you're here, you don't have to do it from underneath, is you can get an idea. Look over. Check your brake fluid level. Pads and rotors are new, that typically means the brake fluid is going to be full. Pads are low, that means the brake fluid is going to be low. So don't go topping off that brake fluid before you verify why the brake fluid's low. Look at the pad life or depth. If the pads are low, the brake fluid is going to be low, unless somebody else has topped it off. Low brake fluid is a direct indication that you need brake pads. You need brake maintenance done. Or low brake fluid could be there's a leak in the system. The master cylinder seals, the rear wheel cylinders on some of the truck, piston seals on some of the calipers, a brake line broke somewhere. 99.9% of the time it's because brake pads are low. If brake pads are low and you top it off and the customer keeps driving and they use that fluid as an indication of their pad health, or if another tech sees it, he may accidentally bypass even checking, because that's the first indication pads are low. That's how you upsell brake pads for a customer that really does need brake pads. So always verify brake fluid level and pad life. If the brake fluid's low and the pads are good and the rotors are good, check for leaks. Something's going on with the system somewhere. Top it off if you need to and drive it to re-verify. But in general, low brake fluid means low pad life. And topping it off doesn't help a customer, honestly. The reason it doesn't help a customer is because you could top it off and they could literally wear the brake pads down, the metal on metal, and completely miss the fact that they needed brake pads, or take it to another shop for an oil change and they look at the brake fluid and be like, oh, it's brake level high, which means pads are good, and not even check the brakes. So be very careful when you do that. One of the first things I do when I come underneath here is I look and see if there are any oils or any fluids leaking all over the place. This one's really clean. I don't see nothing here coming out of the weep hole right here at the trans. Typically that means it's a transmission pan or torque converter output shaft seal is leaking. If it's red or discolored, actually in this one it could be discolored and actually look like oil. It's one of two things. 99.9% of the time in these 1.5 liter EcoBoost, it's the oil pan needs to be resealed right here. Sometimes it is a trans, most of the time it's actually the oil pan on these. And then you'll see some discoloration and fluid around the back side right here where this pan comes together. It's only silicone. Check your boots, make sure nothing's torn out here. Check the brake lines and stuff like that. Check, make sure nothing's torn on your tie rod assembly, ball joint, nothing's torn. Actually grab this and rock it up and down and make sure this toe link is not popping. So you can grab it with one hand and push up and down really hard and make sure that's not popping. Over bumps, you'll get a tap, you'll think it's a ball joint. A lot of times it's actually these sway bar links popping because they break off. Look at the turbo up here, drain tube is good, coolant feed lines are good, boost tubes are good. Crank, nothing's wet around here, crank seal's not leaking. Come up here, look at your cooler and stuff for your trans. I see no leaks around here. I see a little bit of moisture on that line right there, but not enough to be concerned with to raise some kind of issue over right there. So it's 100,000 miles, something's expected. Here, everything's nice and dry. Got a newer filter on it. Everything looks good. Check these plastic elbows and stuff here in the center for this cooling system. They like to crack around the elbows. Your valve body gasket, some of these will leak. There's actually, I've had people come up to me and say, oh, it's leaking, it's coming out of the connector. Be careful with that. They put a factory dielectric grease in there that eventually melts, and it can look like it's leaking. It's not. It's just a little wet from that dielectric grease coming out. Looks like somebody just walk through and try everything. Check your lower control arm. Check the lower control arm bushings in here. Make sure they're not all rolling out and rotten and cracked. Check the back of your caliper plate. Go down the vehicle, look at all the covers, look at the mounts. Another thing you can look at, sometimes you can see it when you're down here, is look up there at that mount and see if there's fluid coming out of that motor mount right there. The bolt in the bottom of it. Or you can look at the top and get an idea, is it collapsed? Is there no spacing top and bottom? There should be spacing top and bottom. Pull on this as you're coming through, check the exhaust, make sure nothing's blowing out here. You see this is kind of rotten. These are actually nuts that are made onto the flange. So even though it's rotten, it's still holding real good. There's no reason to raise any kind of issue here, unless you want to make the customer aware of it and let them know here in the next year or two something may break right there and may cause some kind of exhaust leak. But it's not really that important to say anything about it now because it's still got a lot of time left. Typically I'll just reach up there, take my fingers or a brush or something while I'm underneath here, and I'll just knock as much off as I can so there's less surface area for water to be retained around those. Come down the side, look at everything, pull on everything. Everything looks good. Look at the bushings in the rear, your tie rod assembly, sway bar assembly, drag link, whatever assembly, blah, 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 blah. Look at all your fuel lines and stuff here. Make sure nothing's rotten. You don't see moisture or anything coming out anywhere. Look at the spring. Look at your shock. The shock looks good and it's not super wet. Ford says the spec is more than 1/3 of the umbrella. So if we took this whole depth and we went like right, let's just say right in here, right where I'm holding my finger and I'm making that mark. The fluid would have to be past that in order for it to be a warranted concern. It's 1/3 of the length that sticks past the umbrella. This has electronic parking brakes. So when you did a brake job on this, you'd have to put this in brake maintenance mode. I have videos on that if you need to check that out. Pull on your sway bar here. Make sure it's nice and tight, nothing's leaking. Same thing over here. Check this shock. Look at your exhaust hangers in the back. Everything looks good underneath this car. Spin the tires around a couple times, make sure there's nothing in it. Get a nice idea on what condition the tires are, not just by depth and not just by look, but actually spin them around and look. Once you get the habit of doing this, you can take this from 30 minutes down to 15 minutes down to 10 minutes, and then you'll be rolling at that point. Bushings look good. Nothing's rolled out or rotten. That is your adjustment in the rear for your camber caster combo, I guess you could say. And everything looks good. Connection to the fuel tank. Everything looks good. That's how you do a real good thorough inspection on a 2013 to 2020 Ford Fusion. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Alex.
Yeah.
Forgot something that I want you guys to check when you're doing your inspections as well. And it's lift the hood on this side right here. Check your coolant level. It's on these 1.5 liter EcoBoost, like 2015 to 2019. They had coolant intrusion problems where the cylinders would eat them. Or the cylinders were bad. Check your motor mount area right here. Make sure there's no fluid like I mentioned down below. Check your belt. Make sure there's no cracks. Make sure the belt looks nice and clean. It's not showing a bunch of fibers and stuff like metal slivers and stuff down in there. Get an idea. Look down your front cover. Make sure it's dry. This one's dry. The water pump for this one is right here. See if you see any coolant underneath it. Come over here and look at this. Look at this belt tensioner. Now, Alex, come here. Now I'm going to ask you guys a question here, and then I'm going to ask Alex a question here. There's going to be a learning experience probably for all of us. What's going on with that tensioner?
You got some corrosion going.
What else is going on with that tensioner?
Let's see. I need to get a flashlight.
Get a flashlight real quick.
It looks off, honestly.
It's not that it's off.
Alright. What am I missing?
See the tensioner right there down there at the bottom?
Yeah.
Which way does the tensioner pull? It pulls, no. Which way does it tighten? It tightens down that way, right?
Yeah.
Now, if we look at the way that it tightens, tightens down, there's a wear indicator right there. There's your gap. Let's pull on the belt real quick as if we're trying to loosen it. Pull on it and watch that. See that move right there? Let me zoom in a little bit more. See right there how that's moving?
Yeah.
When that bump goes all the way up against that nub right there, that tensioner has no more tension left. That belt is that stretched to where this has almost bottomed out on this piece right here, and it ain't got no more to go. So it can't properly keep the belt tension, which that is a direct indication that that belt's almost at the end of its lifespan. Maybe 6 months, a year, not even, maybe 6 months. That belt will be stretched to where that tensioner is now going to be laying completely over on that bump stop, and it's going to be no good. So although the tensioner is good and it's still got some life left, right now is about the time to change it.
But then put the tension.
So we're looking at a 18 Taurus right now, just for comparison. This is a 3.7, and this belt is worn. It does need to be replaced. You can see the ribbing and stuff through it. But if you look at the gap, Alex, hold this.
Gotcha.
And take that away, it's washing me out now. If you look at this gap here to that nub right there, I can put my finger in the middle of it. That's how wide the gap is between those two. So even though the belt has wear, the tension is still pretty decent with this one. I can almost stick my finger inside that. Let me see if I can get down there closer. See the wear gap right in there? That gap in between those two nubs, when they make contact, that belt is worn. The closer it gets, the looser that belt is, the more stretched that, or the more stretched the belt is. So I just wanted to add that to the video as a little educational piece for some people as well that may not pick that up right away. That's actually a wear indicator spot on the belt tensioner of almost all manufacturers. Y'all take care. Be blessed.